In March 2014, a 10-track album appeared on Spotify that contained absolutely no music. The record was titled Sleepify, and every single track consisted of 30 seconds of pure, unadulterated silence. It was not an avant-garde art piece or a profound statement on the nature of sound. It was a calculated, highly orchestrated financial heist executed by an independent funk band from Michigan named Vulfpeck. The mechanics of this silent operation were brilliantly simple. The band asked their fan base to stream the album on a loop while they slept. At the time, Spotify paid roughly $0.005 to $0.007 per stream. By keeping the tracks at the 30-second mark, the exact minimum duration required to trigger a royalty payment, Vulfpeck maximized the payout frequency. A single fan sleeping for 8 hours could generate nearly $2 a night. The streaming giant did not find the maneuver amusing. After 7 weeks of continuous silent playback, Spotify pulled the album from their platform, citing a violation of their terms of service. The corporation accused the band of manipulating the system to artificially inflate their play counts. The gatekeepers of the new digital economy brought down the hammer, assuming that would be the end of the stunt. But the damage to the corporate ledger was already done. Because the streams were generated by legitimate premium user accounts, the platform was legally obligated to honor the royalty calculations. A few months later, Vulfpeck received a payout of roughly $20,000. They used every single cent to fund a completely free, fan-routed tour. The stunt proved that the streaming game could be rigged in favor of the artist. This silent rebellion occurred against the backdrop of a collapsing industry middle tier. The traditional path for a working musician was rapidly disintegrating under the weight of the streaming era. The old model required securing a major label advance, spending hundreds of thousands on studio time, and praying for terrestrial radio play to drive physical album sales. That ecosystem was built for superstars, leaving everyone else to starve. In the traditional system, an artist signs away their master rights in exchange for upfront capital. That capital is a loan, subject to brutal recoupment terms. The label keeps the lion's share of the revenue until every dollar spent on marketing, production, and distribution is paid back. For the vast majority of artists, that break-even point never arrives. They become perpetual debtors to their own corporate partners. Vulfpeck rejected this entire paradigm. Led by founder Jack Stratton, the band decided to operate as a lean, hyper-efficient business entity. They did not hire A&R executives. They did not retain expensive publicists to pitch their music to mainstream press outlets. They bypassed the terrestrial radio promotion machine entirely. Stratton recognized that engaging with the traditional industry infrastructure was a guaranteed path to financial ruin for a niche funk ensemble. Operating outside the machine presented immediate, severe logistical challenges. Without a massive marketing budget, discovering an audience relies entirely on algorithmic luck or relentless grassroots hustle. The band had to act as their own production house, marketing firm, and distribution network. Every music video was shot on a shoestring budget, usually in a single room, capturing live takes with minimal post-production polish. The aesthetic was born out of absolute necessity. To survive, the band adopted a radical economic philosophy known as the 1,000 True Fans Theory. Coined by technological thinker Kevin Kelly, this principle argues that a creator does not need millions of casual consumers to sustain a career. Instead, they only need a core group of dedicated supporters who will purchase anything the artist produces. It is a mathematical rejection of the blockbuster mass-market business model. The math behind this theory is straightforward and unforgiving. If an artist can convince 1,000 people to spend $100 a year on their art, they generate $100,000 in gross revenue. By keeping overhead low and eliminating middlemen, a significant portion of that gross becomes net profit. It is a blueprint for the viability of the middle-class musician, built entirely on direct-to-fan relationships. Vulfpeck leaned completely into this hyper-niche strategy. They did not attempt to write pop anthems or chase viral trends. They played instrumental funk, heavily influenced by legendary rhythm sections of the 1960s and 1970s. They catered specifically to music nerds, gear enthusiasts, and fellow musicians. It was a massive creative gamble, betting that a deeply specific, technically proficient sound could mobilize a fiercely loyal, albeit smaller demographic. To cultivate this audience, they embraced absolute transparency. They uploaded tutorial videos breaking down their bass lines. They released the isolated stems of their tracks, encouraging fans to remix and study their compositions. They built a community around the sheer joy of musicianship. This was not a polished, untouchable celebrity brand. It was an open-source funk collective, and that accessibility forged an ironclad bond with their growing true fan base. But engagement on the internet does not automatically translate to a sustainable income. The band needed to monetize this loyalty without taking on the massive financial risks associated with physical merchandise. The traditional vinyl supply chain is notoriously hostile to independent artists. Pressing records requires significant upfront capital, minimum order quantities, and the perilous risk of unsold inventory sitting in a warehouse, slowly draining the band's bank account. A standard independent pressing run might cost thousands of dollars before a single record is sold. If the album flops, the artist absorbs the entire loss. Furthermore, traditional distribution networks demand a steep percentage of every sale to place those records in physical retail stores. For a band operating on a strict, self-funded budget, taking on that level of inventory risk was a mathematically unsound proposition. To circumvent this trap, Vulfpeck turned to decentralized crowdfunding models. They partnered with platforms like Curates, which allow artists to pre-sell vinyl records directly to their audience before manufacturing begins. The campaign goes live, fans place their orders, and the platform only presses the exact number of records purchased. The traditional supply chain is entirely inverted, shifting the power dynamic back into the hands of the creator. The financial implications of this model are staggering. There is zero inventory risk. There are no warehousing fees. There are no retail markups or distributor cuts eating into the margins. The band sets the price, the fans fund the production, and the profits flow directly back to the artists. Vulfpeck transformed physical media from a high-stakes gamble into a guaranteed, highly lucrative revenue stream, selling hundreds of thousands of records independently. With their recorded music generating consistent, low-overhead revenue, the band faced the next great hurdle of the independent musician, which is live touring. Touring is an infamous money pit for mid-level acts. The costs of transportation, lodging, crew salaries, and venue cuts can easily outpace ticket sales. Many independent bands tour for months on end, exhausting themselves physically and creatively, only to return home with empty pockets. Vulfpeck refused to participate in the grueling, unprofitable club circuit grind. Instead of playing 200 small shows a year, they adopted a scarcity model. They played a limited number of highly anticipated, carefully curated events. By treating their live shows as rare occurrences, they drove up demand and ensured that every single gig was a sold-out, maximum-capacity event. They controlled their schedule rather than letting the road control them. This strategy culminated in a historic milestone when the band booked Madison Square Garden. They did not have a major label bankrolling the deposit. They did not have a massive promotional apparatus plastering billboards across New York City. They simply announced the show to their email list and their social media followers. They sold out one of the most famous arenas in the world entirely through direct-to-fan marketing. The economics of that sold-out arena show represent the pinnacle of their business model. By bypassing the traditional promotional machine, they captured a vastly larger percentage of the ticket gross. The merchandise sold in the lobby was not subject to predatory label recoupment clauses. Every dollar generated that night was quiet money, earned independently, distributed directly to the band members and their small trusted crew. The major label conglomerates observed this success with growing unease. The corporate music industry relies on the narrative that artists need their infrastructure to achieve arena-level success. When an independent funk band sells out Madison Square Garden without radio play or a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign, it threatens the foundational premise of the major label monopoly. It proves that the gatekeepers are no longer strictly necessary for massive commercial triumph. However, the major labels cannot simply replicate the Vulfpeck model. The corporate structure requires massive scale to justify its overhead. A major label cannot survive on the lean margins and niche audiences of the middle-class musician. They need global superstars generating billions of streams to keep their publicly traded stock prices afloat. The direct-to-fan blueprint is fundamentally incompatible with the bloated economics of the traditional music business. This reality highlights a massive structural shift in the modern music economy. The viability of an artist's career no longer depends on reaching everyone. It depends entirely on reaching the right people and owning the pipeline that connects them. By retaining their master rights and controlling their distribution, Vulfpeck built a fortress around their intellectual property. They insulated themselves from the volatile whims of major label A and R departments. The structure of Vulf Records itself reflects this commitment to autonomy. It operates less like a traditional band and more like a decentralized creative collective. Jack Stratton acts as the central organizer, bringing in a rotating cast of elite session musicians, vocalists, and collaborators for specific projects. Profits are shared transparently based on contribution. It is a fair, equitable, and highly adaptable business structure designed for long-term survival. Through this meticulous, uncompromising approach, Vulfpeck has achieved something exceedingly rare in the modern era. They have built a highly profitable, sustainable enterprise that completely ignores the Billboard charts. They do not care about radio syndication. They do not bend their creative output to satisfy the algorithms of streaming playlists. They have secured the ultimate luxury in the music industry, which is absolute creative and financial freedom. The story of Vulfpeck is not just a tale of a clever streaming stunt or a successful crowdfunding campaign. It is the definitive case study in how to survive the brutal economics of the modern music industry. It proves that a band can build a profoundly lucrative career by rejecting the traditional game entirely. They are the architects of their own ecosystem, proving that the most powerful force in music is an artist who owns their own labor.